Happy New Year and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to talk a little bit about the seasons that have passed. The New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, and we hope we have time to talk a little bit about the New Orleans Pelicans as well. Joining me tonight, two guys that are contributing to my website, both guys fantastic writers. Mike Fazende of Fazende on Football, and also Bradley Handwerger, freelance journalist who also writes for ericasher.com. Guys, thanks so much for being with us, and Happy New Year to both you guys.
Thank you very much. Same to you and
Mike,
your family.
If you would, please tell the folks a little bit about your blog, and of course they can catch it on my website, ericasher.com, and a little bit about, of course, you're with me on Fridays as well.
Yeah, it's Fazende on Football. It's a blog I do during the football season, and sometime, during basketball and college baseball and whatever. It's Fazende on Football. It's me, Football1 at blogspot.com. And he's the writer. I'm just somebody who spews on a blog.
You just give your opinions, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Bradley, welcome back to the show. And of course, always good to have you, and good to have you on the website as well. And of course, folks can catch you normally after the Saints games and
sure.
Going forward at.
Try to write some Pelican stuff
yes.
when I have a chance, and when a column is deserved. There's a lot more games for basketball than there is for football.
Yes.
And I think you can expect something from me from off-season football when a move is made
yes.
or during the draft.
Sounds good. Well,
great
we're looking
read.
forward to that.
His blog is great.
Thank you.
Saints 7-9. I said on my radio show the other day, I think it's the most disappointing season in Saints history. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. Some will say the 2011 season because of the opportunity to possibly go to the Super Bowl. But guys, I'll start. Fred, I'll start with you. What, in your opinion, what went wrong?
Oh, let's count the ways. I think ultimately what went wrong was a bad read on the players in the locker room by the coaching staff. I think when you get down to it, everything you heard from the players after the game in Tampa, and then their closeout day with the media on Monday, and things I heard in the locker room was that this wasn't a group that was mature and that could handle being professionals very well. And when you're too busy reading about what people are saying about you, when you're not getting to meetings on time, or when you're not doing what the coaches are asking you to do, that shows up on the field, because it shows that you're not doing everything that you need to do off the field to do it well on the field. And I think ultimately that is where the failure is. It wasn't that they didn't play well on defense. Right. It wasn't that Drew Brees turned the ball over. It's that as professionals, they weren't up to the task.
Mike, what can you add? What's your opinion?
Well, I mean, I agree with everything he said. I just think it just got off, the groundwork was laid in the wrong way, starting back from training camp in West Virginia. And I just think there was this a little bit of an air of, maybe a sense of entitlement. We're coming off a winning season, a playoff, a game deep into the playoffs. We had this really nice training camp, and we really don't have to pinpoint focus, laser focus, like you do if you're really just starting out, starting a program. I think they would kind of maybe let's just carry it over and keep going. But then you start getting injuries like the Jarvis Bird, and Drew Brees hurts his oblique, and you just. I remember talking on the radio, Eric, with you, thinking, I don't know, it just seems like it's getting off to a rough start this preseason, the training camp, and then they just couldn't get their footing during the season. They just couldn't get going, and everybody had a bad season. Sean Payton. I think Drew Brees, his stats were great, but bad interceptions, a lot of poor throws, poor decisions, and the defense was up and down.
Guys,
mostly down.
I agree with both you guys, and I think it does go back to training camp. And I think the training camp, when you look at it, was a training camp that you would normally have for a veteran team.
Right.
There was a changing of the guard here, and a lot of guys who obviously were immature, unprofessional, as you mentioned, Bradley. It's been publicized now. Late for planes. I mean, how are you late for a plane that's leaving for a game? Late for meetings consistently. We saw that. Then, of course, the lack of total leadership within that locker room. You wouldn't think that losing so many veteran guys would make that big of an impact. Obviously, those guys weren't the same players on the field, but obviously they had a great influence in that locker room, and obviously that also kind of played into into it, and it led us to what what we're not used to seeing. This was not a typical Peyton coach ball club. We're used to seeing a team that can overcome adversity, a team that doesn't beat themselves. Heard Zach Streif say the other day, he goes, when you look at us in totality of the season, we were who we used to game plan for.
Right.
The teams that were going to beat themselves, and that's pretty much what the identity of this team is now. You can throw out the Super Bowl years because that's not this team anymore. This team is building an identity, and right now the identity is again some of the teams that they used to conquer and on their way to a playoff or a Super Bowl.
Well, too, and there's that gap too where the veterans are becoming old, and the Zach Streets, the Marcus Colstons, even Drew is starting to show signs of wear and tear. And the guys, there's that gap where the new guys that got coming in, as he was saying, there's that lack of maturity and professionalism and that lack of let's prepare. I mean, Breeze was screaming in his press conference at the end of the game, we got to learn how to be more professional and prepare better and get back to that. And then there's that gap. And then, I said we started training camp. Let's go back to the draft. That was a bad draft. So you got all these new players coming in who really aren't that good. The guy that you signed, your big free agent, he's gone 2 games in with the back and then the cartilage, a whole season for torn cartilage. I don't know.
I think there's something more going on there.
I think so too.
Yeah, probably the back.
And then you just, once things started to get unraveled, that leadership that you're talking about wasn't there to corral everybody in and keep everyone focused.
I think it just goes back to the leadership in the locker room, leadership in the front office and the coaching staff. Is that early on, something tells me the problems weren't middle of the season and later. Some of this was going on early in the season,
right?
And it surprises me, knowing the guys in the locker room who consider themselves leaders, that there wasn't any kind of attempt that worked to kind of corral everything. I guarantee you that they tried everything they could have, but they either it's young people just not listening to old people anymore, and or it's young people saying, "Hey, I feel like I'm so old all of a sudden." Young
if
people.
You old, I mean, we'll talk about.
Well, I mean,
but
it's younger people saying, as you said before, let's just ride the coattails of what this team did for the last couple of years. Because if they were able to come in last year and do it, and it's a failure across the board. And it starts with the draft. It starts with the scouts not getting the right players, and kind of just snowballs.
Well, and also a different breed of player. When Peyton first put this team together, he had a lot of guys who were cast-offs, who were told you couldn't play anymore.
Yeah.
And those guys had something to prove, and those guys were the core of this team that won the Super Bowl. Now you got a lot of guys who have been drafted. In some cases, they maybe sat behind some of these veteran guys, but yet, again, they came in and last year had so much success that, as both of you have said, a sense of entitlement. You know what, I'm pretty good. You heard Rob Ryan say it. They drank the Kool-Aid. Well, we've had other teams that have drank Kool-Aid before. When you have true leadership within the locker room, I'm talking with the players, when the coaches have a feel and a pulse of what's going on, you can corral that. Obviously, this got away from them very, very early.
Well, and that's to me the amazing thing about the season is because, say what you want about Sean Payton, he always has a feel for this team and knows what buttons to push, and he didn't this season.
He didn't
know where to go, and that's just really surprising to me, because if you were to ask me, top 5 coaches in the league, he'd be on that list. He'd be right behind Belichick, quite frankly. I mean, he's that guy, and
that's why I say I think he had a bad season. I mean, he just didn't click. I can't put my finger on it, but play calling was at times
some will say
questionable.
He was distracted.
You hear things about him being distracted. I can't say for sure, but on the football, in the football realm, I just think that he had a bad season too. And getting back to we talk about leaders, the older guys that have now, they were not the guys who were vocal. It seems like. I don't think Marcus Colson is vocal. He didn't talk to most anybody. Jari Evans, guys like that are probably guys thinking to themselves, we got this, we'll be all right. We've been through this before, a little adversity. I can count on the guys to pick everyone up. But then that was just not there.
Well, and knowing those players, the guys you just named, they're very much the let's lead by example instead of being the vocal.
And vocal.
Some players just don't do well with that. Right. You know, they would rather be yelled at. They would rather be told to get back in line, and they just didn't hear that, and so the players ran amok.
I think the guy they missed most played the least last season. And that was Vilma.
Well, I agree.
He's such a good leader. He's so smart. He's like a coach on the field, even on the sideline. And I don't think he was on the sideline much at all this season. And he's one of the guys that I think was sorely missed.
Right. Well, and it's hard to be a leader when you're not even on the team. But
you can still bring guys and kind of on the sideline, instruct them on what's going on and maybe what to look out for. Maybe I don't know.
Defense to me was again a huge problem. Obviously, couldn't get off the field on third down consistently. That was all year long. Blown assignments over and over again. Even when we found out toward the end of the season, Rob Ryan simplifying his packages, and again, that's a double-edged sword. You can simplify the package and make it easier for your team, but you're also making it easier for the opponent to diagnose what you're doing.
Right.
And I think that came back to bite him. But even then, blowing coverages, blowing assignments, not being where you need to be, overrunning plays, the lack of a pass rush, the lack of coverage, and it really starts honestly with the defensive line.
Yep.
That to me was the most disappointing
Yeah.
position group of all. And really, there's no excuse for it. You want to talk about some of the other groups on the defense where they had injuries? You got to kind of you take that with maybe a grain of salt. But Bunkley and Foster were the only two guys that were injured. Both of those guys were considered backups. And when you look across the board, whether it was Hicks, whether it was Jordan or Gillette, these guys did not produce this year. And it's probably one of the main reasons why you saw that ripple effect on this defense. Guys?
Well, I think you said the magic words there, defensive line. I mean, that's what I'll begin on defense. That pass rush was non-existent. What's that, 30-something sacks? 36?
I think they ended up 32 or 33.
I mean, come on. After last year, what they had in the 50s?
They were 45 last year.
Well, 45, but I mean, that's a big drop-off.
It's a huge drop.
But it's not just the sacks; it's the pressure.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How often was the quarterback allowed to just sit there and pick it? And the defensive backs were bad already. Guys like Patrick Robinson, who's just here in practice, he's great, but on the field, he's just not confident. He lacks confidence. It's something he at this point, 5 years in, he may never get. And then when your pass rush isn't as effective as it's normally been, it's got to be going through his mind. And I mean, quarterbacks were getting way too much time to throw for the most part.
Yeah.
When they were so good last year on defense, 2013, I guess 2014 is now last year.
Yeah, true.
The defensive line is what keyed it, like you were saying. Yeah, Keenan Lewis was great. Jabari Greer was great. Malcolm and Roman were really good. But their deficiencies were masked by a pass rush that was constantly on the quarterback. You didn't see that this year. And to me, it's Akeem Hicks is a huge surprise, because here's a guy who had nothing but upside and it was really proving himself in 2013, and all of a sudden he just didn't really seem to be there consistently. It was like every fifth play maybe he would do something. Cameron Jordan is a guy who maybe he's just a player. Maybe we overrated him, misjudged what he was as a player. We've always said that Junior Gillette was a one-trick pony. But he at least went out there and gave effort and tried, and you could see the frustration on his face, and you could see him putting effort out there. And I'm not sure you got that out of everybody in the line, which is just crazy considering what they did a season earlier.
Right. Well, when you look back and you talk about, on paper, the best team in Saints history, on paper, a team that can compete with the Super Bowl, one of the reasons why a lot of us felt that way is young, up-and-coming defensive
lineman.
Okay, and when you've got that, a front four, or in the Saints' case last year, front six or front seven, because there were 6 or 7 guys they were rotating in that were playing very, very well, young, athletic, the sky's the limit. And that's where, honestly, where the scales kind of tipped on this thing. These guys didn't show up. They didn't produce. They were exposed, whether it was film, whether it was reading the press clippings, whatever it was. That's really where again, the demise of the defense started. Then you take it to the secondary. You go out and you spend a king's ransom on Jarvis Bird, who has a back injury. I'm still wondering how he was able to pass his physical with a back injury. He was never healthy, didn't participate in training camp. He ends up getting a knee injury later, and as you mentioned, Mike, he's gone. You don't go in and you don't make sure, knowing what you knew from last year in terms of Jabari Greer going down and the problems you had with that number 2 cornerback position. You roll the dice on an aging Champ Bailey. Your backup plan is Patrick Robinson and a second-round project in Stanley Jean-Baptiste, and then the injury started mounting, and you're bringing guys off the street.
Right.
Well, I think you look at the draft project in Stanley Jean-Baptiste, that tells you all you need to know about the philosophy and how these guys are drafting. And I said it last year when I was working at WWL-TV, but these guys have gotten a lot of compliments on their drafting. They haven't done that well. They've had about 2 or 3 drafts.
2 years, 06 and 13. That's it.
09 was all right.
Well, but honestly,
right.
Bradley, if you go back and you look at it, and I've got it right here, average of 2 players per year, with the exception of those 2 years that have made an impact on this squad or other squads. I'm just an average up. So, some can say 09, but if you really look at it, it's about 2 players.
Right. 13 and 6 were easily the best. But why are you, when you know their situation in the secondary, taking a project in the second round?
Right.
That's not acceptable.
Yes.
There's the Richard Sherman syndrome. They saw a guy who was a converted wide receiver, was about the same size as Sherman, same speed, wingspan, the whole bit, but he's not obviously not even close to what a Richard Sherman is. And we go back to that mindset of, we right there. We really don't need a lot of young players to come and make an impact. Let's draft a few guys, we can make them projects, and then they can kind of work their way into the lineup while we got this team that we're Jarvis Bird away, or we're one guy away, or Brandon Cooks away. Mm-hmm. To go to that next step and get back to the Super Bowl.
Well, you had Vaccaro
that was just a misread.
Right. You had Vaccaro taking a step back. A lot of that, obviously, in a new position, something that he obviously was not accustomed to. He admitted that later on in the year. The only guy that really played well throughout the season was Keenan Lewis. I mean, he was kind of on an island, and even then, you could only cover for so long.
And and add to that with a bad pass rush,
right.
He was still out there,
right, and
playing
injured
well.
most of the time
and
as well.
Yeah.
And then I talked about it on the radio show. The lack of quality safeties, again, when you look at it, that meant linebackers were having to blitz, where the year before we saw safeties blitzing, which were able to get there a little bit earlier. Again, they were a step slow. They couldn't get to the quarterback. Then, again, because of the injuries in the defensive backfield, you had linebackers on the field trying to play zone man-to-man coverage. They couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
So there was a ripple effect from all that. The linebackers are solid when you look at it. I mean, again, Lofton is as good as it gets in the box, and Hawthorne proved when they changed the defense a little bit, in the box he's pretty good. But
they still lack speed. They're so slow.
It is a huge void, Mike, huge void. Especially in pass coverage, or again, the ability to run down a runner.
The ability to fill the gaps and get down the line of scrimmage is just, it's really noticeable. Even with Lofton's a great hustler and instinctive at linebacker, but even him, it takes him a little bit of time to get to the play. And then if you don't have a defensive line helping you out as much, and that's a hindrance too. But
Well, it leads me to my next question. There's a lot of talk about the possibility of Rob Ryan being let go. I talked about it on a radio show the other day. There's been one consistent thing on this defense. You talk about the defensive line coach, Johnson. You talk about Vitt, the linebacker coach. For the most part, the secondary coach has been interchangeable. In a lot of cases, the coordinator has been able to bring his own guy in to be able to handle the defensive backs. And I think at some point, when you look at the history of this team since 06 and on, and you look at those 2 guys specifically, and look, I hate to target those 2 guys. They've been longtime coaches, but have the players gotten better under their tutelage? I mean, that's a big question. And why should they be safe from any opportunity to have to be fired when ultimately you feel like you got to continue to change out defensive coordinators? Bradley?
Well, what I don't understand is why can't a defense coordinator come in and hire his own guys?
The
guys who know his philosophy, who kind of mesh with what he's trying to teach out there. And I understand that Sean Payton likes his guys, that he feels comfortable with Joe Vitt, that Bill Johnson's been around for a little while. But at some point, Is it the defensive coordinator, or is it the system that's run under the Saints' office as a whole? I would say at some point, or at this point, why don't you leave Rex? Let him, Rex. I'm calling him Rex. Why don't you
Bring
leave
in
Rob?
Rex.
Bring in
Let him
Rex. Why
coach
don't you leave
the
Rob? Let him hire the guys that he wants to hire, and maybe you'll have some semblance of consistency there under what he's teaching. And I think that's as much a problem as anything out there.
I think Peyton alluded to the fact that there's not going to be wholesale changes, but there's going to be some changes on that staff that will surprise you. And I think one of those guys will be, at least 2 assistants will be gone.
Well, we know McGriff is probably going to Vandy.
Not counting McGriff.
As a defensive coordinator, at least that's been at least reported.
But I think Ryan stays.
Well, I would hope that he gets a second chance. That was going to be the next question. Does he deserve a second chance? I believe he does. Ultimately, everybody's talking about Dennis Allen. If Dennis Allen comes in, that means you're staying status quo with the guys you have.
What Rob Ryan was able to do from the 2012 team to 2013 team, to me, should give him enough to have at least one more season to figure out if it's the right if he's the right guy,
and give him a chance to have a full season with his full complement of players as well, and maybe bring in an assistant or two that he knows. He's worked with before, and he knows him.
Have all of his players healthy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it that he couldn't control this season. I think he deserves another chance, but look, they've already had, 3 coordinators in 4 years now. It wouldn't surprise me if they went 4 to 5.
Well, you got to raise that football IQ on defense as well. You can't get to the point where guys are coming out of college and they can't run a pro system. And that's not just in New Orleans, that's across the board in the NFL. I read an article recently that talked about, again, that the problems they're having in New Orleans right now are problems league-wide. And if you're in a system where Rob Ryan's system is very, very complicated, and you don't have the guys who can absorb it, and you got to simplify it to the point that you're so vanilla and so bland, you're not going to win consistently. You're just not. And, I agree. I think that Rob Ryan deserves another chance. And I think if you're going to point the finger, maybe you need to point the finger to the guys that have been here for a while, because maybe they're the ones that are not being listened to by the players anymore because they've been here for so long.
I think comes back to maybe they misjudged letting go Roman and Malcolm and some of the veterans who maybe they had a year or 2 more to give some of the younger guys some more apprenticeship under them. Maybe you look at the Patriots, the way they kind of keep players around and let the young guys, build up a resume behind them and practice, and then all of a sudden they pop in and they're good to go.
Well, but Belichick, on the other hand, he'll get rid of you too. Once he feels like your time is done, he can't. You don't have.
Usually a year
you don't
before.
linger on. Usually,
Right.
about a year or 2 before. But Rob Ryan, I'd say give him another year.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Happy New Year. Bradley Handwerger, Mike Fazende, my guests tonight. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about the Saints offense. We'll also touch on LSU, Tulane. Hopefully we'll get to the Pelicans tonight. Don't go anywhere.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports every Thursday night, 6 p.m. right here on WLAE TV. On Friday nights, you can catch us on Pelican Sports Television at 9 p.m. That's in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette, and also on WLAE TV with our rebroadcast at 10 p.m. Tonight on our panel, Mike Fazende of Fazende on Football, and Bradley Handwerger, a freelance journalist who writes for ericasher.com. And you can catch both of these gentlemen's writing at ericasher.com as well. Guys, let's talk a little bit about the offense. The biggest thing I took away from this year is, and if you look at it through the paint, the offense is no longer feared. This was an offense that when you came into a stadium, the opposing defense, the fans, heck, the entire city was afraid of this offense. No longer. A lot of it, again, an aging team that really kind of aged right before our very eyes. When you talk about Drew Brees, great stats. Let's face it, the turnovers killed him throughout the season, bad decisions. They hurt the team. We've talked about it over and over again, about especially turnovers on the road, the inability to overcome those turnovers. In the past, you've had a team that, again, had that mindset to be able to overcome adversity. They maybe could have overcome Brees' turnovers. And, again, even though Brees was Brees for the most part, when you look at it from a statistical standpoint, he put the team in a lot of holes. Now, again, I'm not ready to trade Brees. I'll say Brees needs to go out, that they need to move on and find another quarterback. But Drew Brees has to realize, and I think he did toward the end of the season, the type of team that he has, and realize that, sometimes I got to be a little bit more conservative with the football. I also think that the oblique injury hurt him early in the season more than a lot of people let on, and especially in terms of the deep ball, his ability to get the ball out. But the most important problem on this team, I think, and again, it was something that permeated throughout the team, throughout the offense. It was the aging offensive line. Mike, first of all, your thoughts overall on the offense, and then kind of more for the Drew Brees, and we'll get into the position groups.
I think overall the offense took a step back. They missed Darren Sproles. The interior of the offensive line is getting older. A Goodwin in the middle just is not the player he used to be. Neither is Jari Evans. And Ben Grubbs, I don't think was ever that he never really replaced Carl Nix fully, though he did like a workman's job. But I just think those three guys as a whole just didn't do the job. And maybe that forced Brees into some of those interceptions. But a lot of those picks were on Brees. I can think of 3 plays that maybe changed the season when you look back on it. The first game against Atlanta, where he throws the interception in the end zone. The interception against the Lions. And then the interception against the 49ers right before half when you're getting ready to go up another score. Those 3 plays were all on him. And maybe it was in the back of his mind, I have to score a touchdown here, not a field goal. It's always seemed like he was, except for the Lions pick, it was always, let's get a touchdown instead of settling for a field goal. And as the game played out, you think, man, if we could have just got a field goal instead of him throwing a pick, we'd be in better shape right now.
Right. Bradley, to me, it almost felt like 2012 with Brees, like he was trying to do too much at times.
We saw it in 2012. I think we saw it in 2008. Years when the defense wasn't the defense that it needed to be, when here's a guy who's a superstar, who's a future Hall of Famer, who says, in his mind, he says, you know what, I can do anything that anybody else in this league can do, and he's going to try to do it. Well, that's great. It leads you to 2009. It gets you to the heights of 2011. But it also turns the ball over when it shouldn't be turned over. Instead of playing a kind of calm, collected game that within his abilities, he's trying to pinpoint pass when he may not be able to pinpoint pass anymore. But I think, as much as we put it on Brees, and I wrote about it earlier this year, that it was that he needed to come play within his game. Mm-hmm. I think it's the offensive line. You've got
no question.
You've got 2 9-year pros on the right side, one of whom, Jari Evans, is playing with a bad back for the past 2 or 3 seasons.
Yes.
You've got a center who he's been in the league 12 years now, I think, who played with injuries all season. Yes. You've got a left guard who is serviceable. He's not the greatest, but he's paid like he's one of the greatest.
He's paid like Carl Nix, but he's no Carl Nix.
But he's no Carl Nix. And then you've got a good left tackle, one who I think will be a really, really good left tackle, but he's learning. He's young. It's not an offensive line that I think you can build around right now.
No, I agree. And I think that, again, if it was me, I would have put Lolito in, especially after reoccurring injuries with Goodwin. I thought that when Lolito went in, especially toward the middle of the season, he seemed to light a spark on the running game. There's no doubt that Jari Evans is a descending player, and Ben Grubbs was not what they expected him to be. And both guys, I mean, again, when you look at that offensive line, especially the interior of the offensive line, Drew Brees needs a strong interior of the offensive line to be effective. Those guys are highly paid. And believe me, either one or both will not be with this team next year unless they take a significant pay cut. But I think that is something they've got to look at going forward. The question is, how do you do it? Do you go after a free agent and hope that, again, you can plug that hole for right now? Or do you bite the bullet and you go ahead and you draft, put someone in there, and you take a chance that, you know what, there may be some missed blocks, but you know what, we're going to kind of learn on the job.
You look at what Dallas did, and they built through the draft. I think the only way to do it, unless you're a team of right now and you have a guy who's foolproof in free agency, you got to build through the draft, because that gives you prolonged, good play at those positions. If you hit, not that you're going to always hit on the draft, but I think that's the best way to do it. You get a Teron Armstead in there, who I think they really did well in finding. You get a Jari when Jari was in 2006.
Yes.
You find, and he's been starting for 9 years.
Yes. I
think that's the way you got to do it. I don't believe on the offensive line is anywhere you can go in free agency.
Mike, what's your
I
thoughts?
agree. I don't think teams are going to let good offensive linemen get away. They'll figure out a way to keep them on their team. And I think that may have been a smoke signal and maybe set a little bit of alarm when Baltimore let Grubbs get away so easily. But, I agree with building through the draft. I mean, maybe even picking a guard at 13 would be a really tough thing to do. Maybe trade back and go out, and I'd say find the meanest, nastiest guard you can out there to get him on that line. And it's almost like they lacked a little leadership on the line, too. Maybe because of the age, maybe they're just not built like that, the way their personalities are. But you definitely got to build an offensive line through the draft. Carl Nix was a fifth-round draft choice.
Yeah.
And Zach Strief was fourth.
Yes.
And so was Jari. What was Jari? Fourth or fifth? Something like that?
Or maybe I think it's fourth and fifth. I think Jari and Zach, but yeah, they were mid to
Zach
late
maybe
round.
six or
They were all
seven.
mid-round picks.
But they scouted them. They knew it. They fit what the Saints were looking for. And maybe the Saints got away from that a little bit.
The
last
interesting
couple of
thing
years.
is, the interesting thing is that they were able to run block more effectively than pass block this year. And it's something that's not been the MO of this offensive line in the past. With that said, when you look at the running back situation right now, I don't think they'll re-sign Mark Ingram. I just don't. I just don't think it's in the cards when you look at everything they've got to do. But again, you look at it, you got a situation with, as great as Pierre Thomas was, he was injured most of the season. And you got to worry, is that going to be something that's going to be going on for the next couple of years as you kind of keep him on board? I like Kyrie Robinson. We'll have to see what's going on. Did not agree with going out and paying big money for Eric Lorig. I thought they'd been fine and they'd be able to get cast-offs or draft choices at that fullback position. Collins did a great job.
He was fine, yeah.
I thought maybe they overreached there, and I thought it was another bad move in free agency. So it'd be interesting to see what happens to the running back position going forward. But at least right now, they seem like they're solid there.
At running back? Well, I mean, if they're not going to re-sign Mark Ingram, which I don't think they will, maybe go after one of those undrafted free agent running backs, or maybe go after a scat back type like a Sproles or something. I'm not too high on Cadet, Tavares Cadet. I think he's serviceable, but I mean, it's funny. I was watching the game during the season, and they asked Drew Brees if he missed Darren Sproles. And of course we missed Darren Sproles. Who wouldn't? Well, why didn't y'all re-sign him? We couldn't afford him. And I'm thinking, you could have gave up some of your money to keep. It was just that mindset.
Or you could have been smart with the Lorig contract. Right. There were ways to
exactly.
work
I think they could have worked Sproles in.
I think they thought he was a descending player. Mike, I'm going to be honest with you, I thought he was a descending player. I think he got motivated this year because the Saints basically cast him off. He got that extension with Philadelphia. He fits Philadelphia's scheme, and I think he worked his butt off in the offseason to prove the Saints wrong. That was a motivation for him.
I remember telling you I thought he had a little bit of gas left in the tank. He's such a game changer, though. I mean, he can turn a game around in one play. He did that in 2013, the Carolina game at home. The Eagles game he practically saved with the kickoff return, got him in great field position. And he was really one of the few playmakers on offense.
Well, we talk about changing coaches on the coaching staff. Darren Sproles wasn't the Darren Sproles in Philadelphia that he is, or Darren Sproles isn't the guy in Philadelphia that he was here.
Right.
Because I don't think we saw what he could have been here in special teams, because special teams in New Orleans is a joke.
Yeah.
The return game, I mean, I'm surprised that Sanford, who returned at 99 yards. Jalen Saunders returned at 99 yards. Like, that's a surprise to me because they just don't have that in their scheme.
They never used Reggie Bush on kickoffs.
If they had, a good special teams, I think we would have seen Darren Sproles maybe have a little more pop here.
Well, it goes back to, again, I want to talk coaching staff. McMahon's been around for a while now, but yet those special teams, for the most part, haven't been game-breaking special teams. I mean, they just haven't. But yet again, he's part of the good old boy network of Sean Payton, and maybe there has to be some self-evaluation there when you start looking at your coaching staff. They might be my guys, I might be comfortable with them, but when maybe you don't have the talent you once had. And maybe they're not coaching up these guys like you were coaching up the guys previously. So I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward, because you've got some, across the board, some coaches that obviously their position groups just did not produce this year. And McMahon's position group is one of them. Wide receivers, Marcus Colston, one of the greatest Saints receivers of all time, but inconsistent all season, saw to show his age. I like Stills, I like Cooks, although I don't think Cooks showed the all-purpose ability that I think a lot of us thought he was going to show. I don't think he's the second coming of Darren Sproles like a lot of us, myself, predicted during the draft. Nick Toon has been serviceable. It'll be interesting to see if he can become more consistent. Guys, this was a wide receiving core, although they never really had a lot of game breakers. It was feared. It's not feared anymore. Bradley?
Talk about coaches being gone. Henry Ellard, what has he done? I think they missed Curtis Johnson a whole heck of a lot out there with the receivers. And it's not the group that we used to see, from 9, 10, and 11 when, like you said, they were feared. Meacham is not the Meacham he was in 09. Marcus Colston, like you said, great, but he's on an age. I think he could still be a good third down type receiver. He's a big body.
$9 million a year.
But he's not a guy that you can keep around for $9 million a year. Stills has one route in his tree right now, and that's the go route, which he's great at, but you can do so much with that, and you're wasting a position on the roster. Not that Stills is a waste. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you need more guys in there. Where's your Lance Moore? Where's your Colston from when Colston was great? Where's the Meacham from 09 who was doing everything he possibly could, including taking balls back from people who had intercepted Drew Brees? You just don't have that now, and I don't know if the routes are not being run well or what it is, but Henry Ellard needs to look in the mirror, I think, and figure out what he can do to make them play better, or maybe he needs to be released.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the receiving core from Super Bowl years and those, let's say, I guess that might be the glory years now for Peyton and Breeze, but I mean, you had the Lance Moore. I think I appreciate Lance Moore a lot more now than I maybe should have when he was playing. I was thinking, well, he's a slot guy. He can find the zone. Anybody can do that. Apparently, not anybody can do that, because they had a lot of trouble finding that Drew Brees' security blanket on third down. How many times did he move the chains? Just finding that soft spot in the zone, right? And Drew Brees can rely on that, and that's missing. Devery Henderson was a one-trick pony, but he was a good blocker too.
Yes. Right.
But he had speed that put fear in the defense, and the Saints don't have that in the receiving core right now. Even though Brandon Cooks is fast when he was playing, and I think he was coming on. I just they don't have that combination of routes and players where they were feared before. Now it's basically just some guys out there.
Right. Hindsight being 2020, what a spectacular draft for wide receivers last draft. I mean, you could have literally picked 2 wide receivers in that draft that could have come in and been an impact for you.
You could have got receivers.
It was so deep
in every round,
yes.
and you blew some picks on some guys that will never see the field.
We'll get on back to the draft in a moment. Tight end. Jimmy Graham, once again, even with the large contract, just doesn't seem to be the same player once he's injured. He plays through the injury, he tries, but he's just not the same player. You got to like, what Watson has brought to the table as a veteran guy who, again, is kind of unnoticed at times because of his blocking and his ability to catch the football. And I like what Hill has shown so far as an undrafted free agent.
I'm on the Josh Hill train. I like that. I think he does a really good job. And he plays special teams. He's the guy. He's the guy that they need every other position. Really plays hard, knows his game, plays within his game, and does a good job. Jimmy Graham, I've been saying it for a while now. When New England played him the way they played him last season, 2013, played physical, made him basically a receiver and said, he's not a tight end. We're going to play him like a receiver. I think it totally changed the arc of his career because I think you look at it now and teams don't fear him anymore. He alligator arms, lots of passes, whether that has to do with the way they're playing him or whether it has to do with he's trying to protect himself now. He's not what he used to be. And he's either going to have to rededicate himself or he's going to have to realize he is who he is, and the Saints are going to have to figure out a way to not make him the focal point of that offense.
Mike,
because before that, teams who were just playing him straight up and maybe a nickel back on him would be the most you would see as a cornerback. And now they're playing their number one defensive back on him. And playing him like a wide receiver, bumping him and making him adjust his route and rerouting him. And and another time, he got hit in a Tampa game, I think it was last season. He got peleed.
Yeah. Yep.
And he really, ever since then, the alligator arms have really come to surface. And this year, the shoulder's been bothering him. That play on the goal line in the Atlanta game, how do you not carry that guy in the end zone? You outweigh him about 70 pounds.
Right. Yeah, and they knew the shoulder. They went after the ball because of it. Guys, going forward, again, we talked a little bit about the bad drafts, the scouting department, the front office. They got to be held, the coaching staff. Sean Payton's got to be held accountable for what happens on draft day. You can't consistently come out with 2 players per draft and expect to be a winning organization. It's been again overshadowed a bit because of the fact that you got 20 undrafted players on this team, and throughout the years when you've had bad drafts, you've had pretty good undrafted free agents that have come in and have kind of taken up the void. Right now, they've got some cap problems. $21 million over the cap, and whether it's Evans, Grubbs, Colston, Bunkley, Hawthorne, all big cap numbers. Now, there's going to be a way to maneuver around that, but again, you're still not going to have a tremendous amount of money to spend. So it really means that this draft is one of those critical drafts in the history of the franchise because, first of all, you win the last game, you go from possibly a top 10 pick to 13, and now you're in a situation where literally you don't have a lot of wiggle room going forward. To me, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, interior offensive line, cornerback, athletic linebacker, and I think an every down defensive end, somebody that can play the run and pass or big needs. Bradley, I'll take you first. Your thoughts on the cap situation, and then if you would morph into what do you think the needs are and how significant this draft is.
Mike Triplett, who works for ESPN.com and has been covering the Saints for a long time now, has this thinking, and I'm fully in his camp on this one, that cap whatever. You can always work around it. We thought they had a bad cap year last year, and they were all of a sudden able to sign Jarris Bird to a large contract. Right. You can always figure it out. And you got to remember, it's going up next year, and it's going to keep going up because of the TV contract. So they're not in cap purgatory necessarily. They may be on the edge of it, but I don't think it's something that they can't maneuver around. And you're right. I don't know that you can go with a offensive lineman in the first round unless you are absolutely positive that this guy is going to be a 10-year pro. Mm-hmm. But they need offensive linemen. I think they need another cornerback, a guy who can legitimately play. I think they need help at receiver and linebacker more than I actually think they need help on the defensive line. Because I think with the right coach or with the right motivation, the defensive line can get back to what they were in 2013. I think they need athleticism on the outside at linebacker. They need cornerbacks. And they need offensive linemen.
Mike, what could you add? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. They need. The only thing I would say is everything he just said with speed. It looks like they lacked a little speed this season as well.
Concerned about the cap?
No. Sean works the cap. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about
your son, Sean Fazende.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And he sees where they can save $30 million right off the bat just by a couple of moves.
Yes.
And I've read other articles where they can save up to 40 cut like $40 million off what they have now. So I'm not as concerned about it. Like Bradley was saying, I mean, every year we think, oh my God, the cap, and then maybe they sign a Jarrett Spurd, or they bring in players, they sign a Breeze or a Graham. So I think it's okay.
Mike, major overhaul or tweak this offseason?
I think they need more than a tweak. I mean, you got some serious issues on offensive line, a speed at linebacker. You got a whole side of the field that can't cover. So I think they're going to have to make some bold. They got to do really good in the draft. Maybe go back to where they find a guy who's looking to emerge, that Scott Fujita type, and maybe they can plug him in there and get some experience and get some knowledge on the defense, guys who know where they're supposed to be. But I would say not a tweak, but not an overhaul. I don't know if that makes any sense.
A major tweak.
Major, there you go. Major that's
tweak?
why.
Yeah.
See, he's the writer.
Major tweak.
He's the writer. I'm just a little guy that spews the blood.
The franchise has been in pretty good hands since 2006. The leadership has been pretty good. I think they've, in general, trended the right way. This season, obviously, was not the right direction. But I don't think you need a major overhaul. This isn't a rebuilding process. But you definitely need to work some positions. You need to maybe overhaul the coaching staff. Maybe bring some new guys in, some fresh blood, some new air. But I don't think it's a major overhaul situation.
We'll say this: I think it's going to be interesting because
what you think?
You got to get rid of the dead weight. Okay, obviously guys that just did not buy into the program. Those are guys that obviously are going to be gone. Some of those guys may be expensive. Most of them are going to be fairly cheap because they're going to be young players. They may be better in the next stop. And then again, you got to be very leery of getting rid of veteran guys who know the program, who have shown leadership, because you've already seen that void on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think it's a major overhaul. I like the word major tweak.
Major tweak,
but
yeah,
they've got some positions where they've got to energize those positions immediately.
Yeah.
And guys that can come in and play at a high level, there is no more, it's almost like if you're a first or second round pick, you've got to get on the field immediately and be a contributor. And they're going to need that. They're going to need a lot of guys that took a step back this past season. They got to step up. And I want to know, what's the identity of this team? Is it the identity of this team, the 2012 Saints, or is it the 2013 Saints? Because I think that, 2013, they were this close. 2012, they were a very, very bad team. And when you look at just the body of work over the last 3 years, it looks as though they may be the 2012 Saints more than the 2013 Saints. I guess we'll have to see what's going to happen in 2015. Guys, let's shift gears. LSU loses to Notre Dame in the Music City Bowl. They end up 8-5. I got to tell you right now, and this is the thing, the most glaring deficiency on this team has been the quarterback position. It continues to be. It is hard to mask that deficiency on the most important position on the field, and it has consistently bit this team with so much talent all season long. This is something that's got to be addressed in the offseason. Every single position group, in my opinion, got better throughout the season with the exception of the quarterback. And again, it's not fair to the rest of the team or the program when you don't have the guy that touched the ball on every play that can at least be a factor in a game. Mike, your thoughts on the Tigers and where they are right now?
I agree with you, Eric. I think the quarterback position is going to be what prevents them from progressing back to the program where they were. And Les Miles, as the head coach of LSU, just cannot, for the life of him, recruit a quarterback. He just doesn't know how. He's got one system that he wants his quarterback to play in, yet he recruits a quarterback, multiple quarterbacks, who play a complete opposite system and tries to convert that person into a pocket passer. I think Zach Mettenberg fell into his lap, and he inherited Matt Flynn, and Jamarcus Russell, and other than that, it's been nothing. And he just don't know how the quarterback position works. Today, the Notre Dame game, I would have ran Leonard Fournette 30 times. He had 10 carries for 140 yards, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Ran a touchdown back for a kickoff for a touchdown.
Well, he was phenomenal, and obviously the focal point of the offense. Your thoughts on the quarterback position?
It's a failure of the quarterbacks to progress and to learn the playbook. But it's also, I think, a little bit on Cam Cameron, the offensive coordinator and the quarterback guru. He's got to find a way to make the quarterbacks know what he wants to do, but he also has to be able to put his foot down. And I understand it's not the easiest situation, but put your foot down and tell Coach Les Miles, look, this is what we need to be doing, and not have a battle as far as what they want the offense to look like and the quarterback to do. And I think you can't put it all on Jennings. You can't put it all on Brandon Harris. You got to put some of it on the coaching staff.
Yeah.
No, they are what they are. I mean, it's up to Cameron to develop them. It's easy. I could be called a great quarterback guru if my students were Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Joe Flacco. Hey man, I'm a great guru, quarterback guy. But what's he going to do with what LSU has? And so far, except for the 1 year he had with Mettenberger, other than that, I mean, it hasn't really shown much.
It's the key to next season, honestly. You can't go into a season with Harris and Jennings at this point. You just can't. You can't roll the dice on a possible Final Four appearance, national championship, with the type of talent you have on this team if you have that deficiency at quarterback.
They're so far away from that next season. I wouldn't even think about that if I'm an LSU fan.
Guys, you got to love the running back situation. Obviously, you're losing McGee and Hilliard, but you got to love Williams and Fournette. Fournette, obviously, in the bowl game, showed everything that Tiger fans thought he would be. I've always questioned him as bringing back kickoffs. He takes the kickoff back, 100 yards. He was a man among boys. He finally, it took him some time to learn how to run in the college game, but once he has, you can see that this guy is just a heck of a player. And you know what? That will probably be the focal point of this offense going forward.
As well, it should be. I mean, nothing against the Catholic League, but it's a little different caliber than if you're Eddie Lacy coming out of Dutchtown. You're playing different competition.
Yes. Right.
So it obviously, I think it makes sense that it would take him a little while to kind of figure out the college game and to figure out where the holes are going to be, because the guys are probably a little bit quicker than, no offense to Brother Martin and Rummel and all that, but they're a little quicker than he's used to. But once he did, we saw at the end of the season, the Texas A&M game, he was phenomenal. And in the bowl game, I think you saw exactly what the identity of the team needs to be, which is let's hand it off to Fournette. Let's maybe pass occasionally, nothing crazy, but let's just keep the game, between the tackles.
Yeah.
What they're going to have to decide to do is, because if you keep doing what you're doing with the current quarterback situation, teams are just going to load the box.
Right.
And, try their quarterback to beat them. They got to figure out what these guys do best, Jennings or Harris, with whoever they decide on, and develop that instead of trying to make them what they aren't. Yeah. And then that'll ease the burden on Fournette, because believe me, he's going to have 8-9 in the box if not. They got some good recruits coming in too at running back.
Right. At the time we're taping right now, John Chavis is undecided on whether he's going to sign a contract with LSU. He's going to go Texas A&M. Defensively, for the most part, with the exception of the bowl game where they couldn't get off the field on third down, they got better every single week. Once Beckwith was inserted in the lineup, Godchaux and Adams, they were a different defense.
Yeah, but today's game just looked like they didn't scout Notre Dame at all, or maybe Notre Dame threw some wrinkles in there they weren't expecting, because they were able to move the ball up and down the field, with the exception of a few series in the second half. But the one knock I have on Chavis, it's always been, is when the game's on the line and you need to make that stop, the Alabamas, today the Notre Dames, teams get that final drive on you. And for some reason, he plays zone when he should be blitzing. He's blitzing when he should play zone. But other than that, I mean, he's been a great asset for LSU. The defense, they ended up the number one defense in the SEC this season.
Yes.
After the start they had.
Oh, yeah.
Which is incredible.
Your thoughts on Chavis?
He'd go for a little bit more money. I mean, LSU pays him pretty well.
Right.
Highest paid defensive coordinator in
A&M's throwing
one of them. A&M's throwing Muschamp
money.
to sign for $1.7 million. But to me, if you're looking at the situations, look, you may own Louisiana at LSU because it's the only thing going on, and you've got Texas and Baylor and TCU and whatnot in Texas. But you've got a coach and someone who knows what he's doing on the offense.
Right.
And if you can pair your defense with that, then you're going to be fighting for national titles for a long time coming. I think that would be the only thing that makes me pause and think that he could absolutely take that job.
Right. Guys, Tulane went 3-9, ninth place in the American Athletic Conference. It was a rebuilding year, but yet a year in which they played a lot of young players. I think this program's going to go as Tanner Lee goes. If Tanner Lee can learn how to be a quarterback that takes care of the football, I think the sky's the limit for him. They got a tremendous amount of speed on the field now, something we haven't seen in Tulane in maybe ever. The question is, again, for me, how's C.J. Johnson getting better as a coach? And I'm talking about game time. I'm not talking about game plan. I'm talking about game time. Bradley, your overall thoughts on Tulane and again, how this season may turn into something down the line that could be prosperous for them?
Well, I think the success that Tulane had in 2013, we looked at it and we said, all right, it'd be really nice for them to have that again in 2014. But I think when you talk to them in the program, they all knew that this was going to be a tougher year and that they were building for the future. And I think the experience they got, I think Tanner Lee got in, figured out the college game. Now he has an off season to progress and really work in the system. If he can make that next step, I think they're going to be a pretty good team for the next couple of years.
Mike?
They got to recruit the big guys. I mean, Tulane's always going to have skill position, wide receivers, running backs, defensive backs. They got to get out there and get some offensive linemen and defensive linemen. Until they do that, they're going to flounder around a 4, 5, 6 win.
Do they take the Buddy Stevens mode where you bring a guy in, you redshirt him, you get him into the weight room, and then maybe you got 3, 4 years with that guy at a high level?
Maybe so. I haven't thought that much about it, but I just think they need to get the big guys in there to win in the trenches.
I think they can do that in the future, but right now they've got to get players in.
Maybe go JUCO, yeah.
Right.
Because that had a lot to do with Tanner Lee's interceptions too. He didn't have a lot of time to throw it.
Right. Well, he did at time it was tunnel vision. Another key piece going forward, guys, you got to find a kicker. I mean, you got to find a kicker. I mean, you can't go into next season without a guy that can legitimately hit extra points and field goals.
Yeah.
I mean, you left a lot of points on the field because of that.
And you went
really
for it on fourth down a lot of times when you could have taken a 3, but you said, nah, we're 35 yards out, let's go for it.
How about CJ? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just remember signing day. I did a story following CJ around on signing day this year, and he was raving about this kicker. I don't know what happened from high school graduation to the college field, but he wasn't the guy that they thought they were getting.
Right. Well, it's got to be a priority here in recruiting. Guys, we've got about a minute or so left. Your thoughts on CJ as how he has evolved as a coach. Some Tulane fans question him on his game time decisions. How is he getting better? Or is he getting better?
Well, I think he's coming along fine. His recruiting's always going to be there. He knows how to hire assistant coaches. And he does need to get better on game night or game day. But other than that, they need to stick with Johnson because I think he can build this program into a consistent winner.
I think he's the right guy. I think we can't forget that he was never a coordinator.
Exactly. That's
he's
issue.
coming from just a position coach. So he's learning on the job right now.
Yes.
And I think he's done really, really well with what he's been given so far.
Guys, future's bright for Tulane?
I think so.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
How about LSU? Future bright for LSU going forward?
I'm going to withhold judgment.
They get the quarterback situation figured out.
And the Saints? Future's bright for the Saints, or?
The future is not so bright.
There are lights on.
Bradley Handwerger, Mike Fazende, thanks so much for being with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports tonight. Always good to have you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this show each and every Friday night here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also, you can catch us on Pelican Sports Television at 9 p.m. each and every Friday night in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. You can also catch me on the radio weekdays, 9:90 a.m. WGSO from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. Remember, you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. You can also catch the writing of both of these gentlemen at ericasher.com as well. And, of course, always you can follow me on Twitter at Eric_Asher. Special thanks to our guests, Mike Fazende and Bradley Handwerger. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Again, another great year coming up here in 2015. We hope you're here each and every Thursday night checking us out. My name is Eric Asher. Have a great new year, and we'll see you right back here next Thursday night for Inside New Orleans Sports.